So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some tools and strategies for planning your time during research and writing. So an assignment calculator is a nice little tool that can give you a plan or schedule of the research and writing process broken down into small steps, each with its own due date. All you have to do is enter your start and your end dates. So the start date is the day you want to actually start working on your assignment. It doesn't have to be today. Maybe you're planning ahead, planning your time. And similarly, the end date doesn't need to be the actual due date. Ideally, it should be earlier to allow yourself extra time, especially if you want to submit your draft to the right site. And in that case, you'd want to leave 3 business days to receive feedback from your writing coach. And I'll talk more about the right site at the end of the webinar. So now I'll talk about a couple different assignment calculators you can try. There are many. The links to these are on our handout that you will be receiving from Crystal. So the first one is an assignment calculator from Simon Fraser University. It breaks down the steps for you into recommended percentages, identifying the day you should begin each step. So for example, it might recommend 20% of the time for the research, 10% for outlining, 20% for drafting, and so on. This SFU version also allows you to import the first day of each step to your Outlook calendar, and the instructions for how to do this are on our handout as well. Now be sure to interpret each calendar event it enters as the day to begin that step. You might actually want to manually change the event to occur each day until the next step begins, or even schedule in break days. The University of Toronto calculator is interesting because it allows you to choose between several different types of assignments, including literature review, as well as annotated bibliography, presentation, even graduate school application. And similar to the first calculator, you'll receive recommended steps, but different types of assignments have slightly different writing processes with different steps. So this assignment calculator not only gives you a recommended timeline, it also gives a guideline for how to approach the particular type of assignment. With the U of T calculator, you can also generate a PDF that provides the steps and the dates. Personally, I didn't find the PDF overly useful. I found it more useful to manually put the dates into my Outlook calendar. Now, if you're very visual or tactile, you may also want to print a blank monthly calendar and write down which step of your assignment that you should be working on each day. Excel has a template for this. The template you see here is called Blank Monthly Calendar, and instructions for how to find it are on our handout. Alternatively, you can print your calendar from Outlook with a specified date range and 1 month per page. And we've also provided instructions for that on the handout. Now, there are even assignment calculators specifically for the graduate thesis and dissertation, of which the literature review may be a part, and research is certainly a huge component. Now, the University of British Columbia's thesis calculator allows you to choose a master's or PhD option to get tailored results. And with this one, the steps are broken down by semester. Detailed steps are given not only for writing, but also suggested professional development and self-care during your degree. This time you can sign up for email reminders, which could be useful if you're more apt to check your email than your calendar. And a downside is that it's geared toward UBC students specifically, so many of the links or suggested steps are relevant only to them. So you might also want to try the University of Minnesota's dissertation calculator, as it gives very detailed strategies for each step. Steps identified include developing research methodology, reviewing the literature, analyzing data, and writing. And like the SFU calculator that we discussed at the beginning, each step is broken down by percentage time to spend, accompanied by a due date for each step. For these longer projects, I suggest creating a blank calendar in Outlook devoted completely to that one project. You can actually overlay this over your other, like your regular calendar by having both checked off. And this is a good idea to help keep you focused on the various steps of one project at a time. The assignment calculator will suggest time periods for each step, then you can put them into Outlook, signed in with your AU email address. And here you can see I created a calendar with different steps from the University of Minnesota's dissertation calculator. I color-coded each step just so I could quickly see where one ends and another begins. Our handout contains instructions for how to create and print this yearly calendar. You can print a hard copy or print to PDF for a digital copy. All right, here's a really quick challenge to sum up our discussion of time management. You can put your answer in the chat. What is the benefit of using an assignment calculator? Is it A, break the writing process into steps, B, give you a schedule to input in your calendar, C, manage your time while writing, or D, all of the above? Oh, yay, I see lots of Ds. That's great. Yeah, these are all great benefits of using an assignment calculator. So I hope that you'll try it. So I'll turn it back over to Joanna now to talk about journaling your search.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sarah Jean. If I switch to the next slide, is that working?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, awesome. So on to search journals. As you search, it's very helpful to keep a document or a search journal of the terms you've used, how you found the results, and notable articles and citations that you will want to revisit. I'll go over using a Word document and using an Excel template. So here's an example of a Word document. Sorry, I want to stay on that one. Okay, here's an example of a Word document. I like using it for journaling my search as it's quick and easy. Here's one way to journal your search in Word. In the main document, you can use to keep track of searches and results. Here are the main components of this document. We've got all right. So information about the topic, the database searched, the searches tried, and the relevant results and the relevant articles found. For articles, we recommend copying the whole citation you have, all the information to find it again. In the case of the second article, I've added the abstract because the title, Scholars in Solitude, wasn't very descriptive. And so having the abstract makes it more clear, whereas the first article, the topic is quite obvious from the title. You can also highlight parts of the abstract that stood out to you or add in a note on how the article might be relevant to your search. So looking closer, I identify where, when, and what I searched and what's missing. Correctly formatting citations can come later. I've highlighted this note to indicate that it still needs to be correctly formatted. You'll do lots of searching, journal your searches, read abstracts and full articles, and make search notes on individual resources, and then make a short list of selected resources for your current assignment. As we've said, there are many ways to consider journaling. This journal has been created using Excel. I know someone said they had already started out using the template that we shared. Here it is as well. So you can copy this into Numbers or Google Sheets or Excel and fill in your own searches. The researcher here has first identified their research topic of hand hygiene in hospital workers and separated the main concepts of their research topic and their synonyms. Consider ways to combine your search using terms using the and ors. If you need help developing your search, have a look at our guide to the research process. I'll share the link for that in here. And document the databases used and the results found. You can also make comments about the relative merits of your search. Did you find too many items? Not enough? This is a more general way to keep track of your searches. You'll want to create a separate document to make notes on individual articles and other resources. And then we'll go on to search history and alerts. Various databases allow for you to find your search history, and some allow for alerts to be set up. Many of these require setting up a personal account with the vendor that the database is run by, such as EBSCO or ProQuest. Here's an example from an EBSCO database. You can select Search History from underneath the search box on the results page. From here, you can see all the searches you've run and can also rerun those searches again. Keep in mind that these will only be saved while you are actively searching. They'll time out if you step away, lose internet, or leave the page, unless you set up an EBSCO account. The problem is that setting up an account with each vendor can be kind of a pain. They are considered external to the library, so we can't support issues you're having with them, but they have lots of resources if you choose to go this route. Alternatively, you can use a citation management software, which we are having a full webinar on in a couple of weeks, and we will also touch on today. Some databases allow you to set up alerts on particular searches. So if something new is added to the research area you're looking for, you'll be notified. I like using Google Scholar for this, as there's such a wide variety of publications. However, they have very limited options for searching, so it may or may not be the best option for you. It's always a good idea to set up a few alerts to make sure you are up to date on your topic. And now Robin's going to talk about organizing your research. And Robin, you should be able to just go ahead and take control of the slides.
Great, thanks, Joanna. Yep. So in regards to organizing your research, I'm going to talk a bit about citation management software. And then Joanna is going to speak to folders and file naming. And, oh, excellent. Sarah Jean's thrown a link in the chat already. So we have a handout and library guide on citation management, and I'm going to put the library guide link in the chat as well, because that goes into more details than what we have time for directly in this talk. So briefly, citation management software allows you to save and organize literature as you are searching. It can also be used to help you cite as you write and to generate bibliographies. There are entire recorded webinars available in the library guide that I put the link in for in the chat and in the handout. So I'm going to focus in this presentation on citation management as it relates to keeping you organized. If you have any questions about using the tools or want to learn more about how those tools can help you cite as you write or generate bibliographies, please don't hesitate to reach out to the library. So to start with some examples, this is an article I found doing a search for research data management. In the top right of my browser, I can click my Zotero add-on to save the article. And then a window comes up letting me know where in Zotero that article is saving to. It is then saved in my Zotero library. You can see that it saved a record of the item, a PDF copy, and a snapshot of the Science Direct website where I got the article from. You can use the Notes tab to add notes on the item. For example, notes on where you got it from, or if you use a search journal like Joanna suggested, you can add a note connecting to that journal. I'll also add that if you are using items like print books, you can manually add a record of them to your library so you don't lose track of them either. Just highlighting the Notes tab there. I can also organize items I have saved. On screen here is an example of articles and chapters sorted by course they were collected for with subfolders for assignments. I can also tag resources I've saved in order to make them easier to find, because you can search on the tags, or you can click on any tag and only items in your current folder that have been assigned that tag will be displayed. So I like to keep a running list of tags, and they're showing in the bottom left corner of the screen there. I keep a running list of the tags I've created and what types of items they are assigned to. The example on screen here, so I'm just going to click to make it show up. There we go. is an Excel sheet of tags from the beginning of a project on research data management. So I keep a separate list outside of Zotero so I know what all the things in the tag cloud in the bottom corner mean. As I read more articles, I'm going to add more tags to the list so that I'm consistently tagging things with the same terms for the same meaning throughout a longer ranging project. Items in your library don't only have to be in one folder. So pictured on screen here is an article on curation of qualitative research, and it's also about developing curriculum for teaching curation. I placed the article in two different folders, one on data curation and one for educational materials, which are both in my research data management folder. Doing so doesn't create extra copies of the item. It only exists in my Zotero library once, but it can be added to as many folders and subfolders as I like by dragging and dropping. This allows me to organize papers by course or assignment as well as by topic, without having to save duplicate copies into different folders. It's also an option if you don't like working with a lot of tags and prefer to have things in folders. Now, if you don't want to use citation management software, you can create a naming system for folders on your computer. You should be consistent in how you name folders and files within them and document those naming conventions. This can be as simple as creating a plain text README file to include in the top level folder that explains how you named the files and how you organized them. If you want to include items in more than one folder, you can create a shortcut on Windows or what's called an alias on a Mac. Links to instructions on how to do so are included in our handout. And Joanna is now going to talk to us about naming conventions for those folders and documents.
All right, thanks, Robin. So it's good to think about what files you keep on your computer and how you organize them in your head. What do you have to organize? Personal, kids, education, work, taxes, medical? I like to organize mine by semester and then course within the semester. So it really depends what files you need to organize and what organization system makes the most sense for you. Folder naming is important, but if your files don't have helpful names within those folders, it's going to still be really hard to find what you're looking for. So in regards to file names, use descriptive names like the author's name and a word that describes what it's about, why it's relevant. Use consistent format for dates such as year, month, day, just the year, etc. Avoid unusual characters such as slashes, ampersands, dollar signs. Do not use spaces to separate terms. Use underscores or differentiate words with capitals instead. Keep names as short as possible and avoid repetition. Okay, so here we've got some examples of ineffective file names. I'm sure we've all had issues with various file names in the past. So how would you rename these? Write your answers in the chat box. We can start with the English paper options. I love mommy. I don't think that would be very helpful, although maybe it would make you feel good. Okay, course name and date is good, but for this one, we've got two different paper drafts. Maybe we don't want to save two paper drafts, but you never know when you're trying to make a change. Version number and dates, that's a good one as well. Okay, so here are some we came up with, and of course these don't have to be correct, but these are just some ideas. So in this case, we chose the author that the paper was about and selected volume 1 and 2 as you suggested. For Johnson, we added the year because we've got a couple different years of Johnson papers, and the topic, because if we're in like an ed course, we've got an ed theory paper and an ed practice paper, and then the notes about it, about one of them. And then for the nursing theory, that's pretty broad. You're probably going to have to cover a lot of nursing theory if you're just taking a look at one article. So good to put the author, year, and the topic. So some ideas there. All right. And now I'm going to let Sarah Jean go on to discuss note-taking.
Thanks, Joanna. Okay, well, the effective note-taking strategies that I'll discuss include reading actively, using templates to take your notes and engage with the material, and Robin will also weigh in on this one, and also knowing how and when to quote, paraphrase, or summarize. When preparing to take notes effectively, it's important to read actively for understanding. Reading actively means that you continually think critically about what you're reading, you reflect on what you've read, and you think about questions that you have about your source. Now, when working with journal articles, start by reading the abstract to determine if the article might be useful. Determine the article's conclusions from the abstract before you read the article to help you understand it as you read it. Scan the article, reading the headings to determine relevance and to preview the article's main points. At the same time, scan for keywords that relate to your topic. When reading books, use the table of contents, headings, and index to help you find relevant material. In any text, the introduction, the conclusion, discussion section or chapter can also be useful portions to read and reread to help gain understanding. And you should periodically take breaks and summarize in your own words what you've read to be sure that you understand it. If you find yourself talking out loud to your source, you're doing it right. Once you're done reading, spend a few minutes explaining the main points to an online study buddy, your spouse, a friend, a colleague. This will force you to put the ideas in your own words, ensure your understanding, and prepare you for taking more in-depth notes. And finally, part of active reading is engaging physically with the text. You can start out by highlighting, underlining, and circling to identify main points and key words or phrases. Write your questions, thoughts, and observations in the margins. And if you find your brain doing word association with outside concepts or related words jumping into your head, then note those in the margins as well. If there's a visual way you can present some of the information to help yourself summarize it and boil it down, then do that. You might, for example, put a flow chart of related ideas on a page that you can then attach to the article. You could also make a diagram of a particular concept that you want to remember, or even create a doodle that represents some important information. By doing any of these things, you're interacting with the source physically, which helps with comprehension and engagement. You can also engage physically with the text, even if you don't print the article, by using a PDF reader's highlighting and commenting functions, or by using a citation management system like Zotero. So here, I use Zotero to highlight different types of information based on the color. So I used blue for key terms, yellow for points on my research topic, and purple for super important points on my research topic. I also added a comment questioning the point in yellow, just so that I would remember to clarify it when taking my notes later. So comments and the content of highlights can be viewed in Zotero on the sidebar to the left of where the article appears. Now, there are some benefits to using a PDF editor instead or as well as Zotero. Here I use the browser Microsoft Edge, which is a great free option that allows you to highlight in several more colors. It also allows you to draw and add typed text. This is useful for showing relationships between points, like I did with these arrows, adding further emphasis, like I did with underlining, circling, and this attempt at a star. And adding text wherever you want on the page, as I did in blue. Use previous studies to support new research, focus on identifying relationships. The edits you make in a PDF editor will also appear in Zotero as long as they're reading from the same file. So from your Zotero library, right-click on the article and choose Show File to see the file in its folder outside of Zotero. Then you can open it in another PDF editor. So to open it in Edge, if you'd like to use Microsoft Edge instead of Adobe Acrobat, right-click on it, choose Open With, and then choose Edge. And Edge should open with the annotation tools in a bar at the top of the screen, as shown here in this gray bar. And just be sure to save it in order to keep your annotations. Oh, and I was going to mention, actually, that Robin taught me the other day that you can change the default PDF editor used by Zotero so that when you go to edit it, it will pop up in your other editor. So if you go to edit, at the top of the screen, it says edit, and then it gives you a list of options. Choose preferences at the bottom, and then the general tab. And in that general tab, you'll see a setting that says open PDFs using, and there you can choose the editor like Edge or Adobe Acrobat. Here's an example of a mind map or a relation map from Heart. You can do this through any approach that works for you for a single article. You might find it even more useful for exploring the ideas you glean from multiple articles. And we'll see another way to deal with information from multiple sources at once a little later on. But I did want to show you that when working with an article to understand its contents, you don't have to treat the information in a linear fashion. Playing with it in a visual fashion can help you engage with it and thus understand it more comprehensively. In addition to taking notes actively on the source material while reading and mind mapping the information, you can use a template as you read to help you summarize important points for each source. All of the following templates can be accessed through links on our handout that you'll receive. And Robin has provided our first template to guide your reading of an article.
Thanks, Sarah Jean. So this template is geared toward in-depth reading of a particular item. You don't have to use all of the sections I've listed on here. Think about what is most relevant to you and your project. There are some I've added in here that are specific to my role within the library and some of the literature I read for that. I've included an empty copy linked in the handout so that you can go download it and edit it as you wish. So I'm just going to go over the sections on here now. I have a section for tags, and that matches the tags that I use in Zotero, my citation management system. I like to assign my own, but you can also look at keywords assigned to a particular article. They're usually listed underneath the abstract. Under quick description, I put 1 to 2 sentences of what the article is about in my own words. And then under key takeaways, I put 1 to 2 key points for me and what I'm working on. So that may not be the key takeaways as the author intended if there's something that the author is covering that's related to my topic but is more tangential to their key points. The key terms are any terms defined within the article itself. And then for important points, I put what the author's key points are. And I tend to summarize the paper as I go and then put the most important points there. For method, if you're reading a research article, I look at how was the research designed. For example, was it an experiment, surveys, interviews, etc., and I put that information there. And then in the other of interest category, I put any other points, critiques, or interesting connections I make as I read. And some of those may end up being put in the key takeaways at the end once I'm done reading, or they may go into the follow-up section. It's kind of like a catch-all place for me to put my thoughts as I'm moving through. I have a 4AU section, and that's because if I'm reading something for my current role in the library, I put any notes there that relates to any of the services I'm working on at AU. You may want to change this section to be for your particular assignment, or if you're working on a series of assignments or a thesis, you may want to make some notes about what aspect of the project you think this is most useful for. I will sometimes then also summarize or put a couple shorter points in the key takeaways so that if I'm referring back to the template, I know I can look at that quick description and key takeaways at the top to know what I might want to look for my more in-depth notes on below. And then the follow-up section has any references or concepts that I want to return to and look up from other authors later. And I'm going to pass this back over to Sarah Jean here.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Robin. Here's another template to give you an idea of how to take detailed notes when you're gathering evidence, data, or quotes that you want to discuss. And this is just to give you an idea. You could also create your own template in Word, but this could be a starting place. So place the citation in the first column. Then summarize the main idea in the column next to it. The main points identified in the third column will also usually consist of summarizing, while you can go into more detail in the supporting details column with paraphrases and direct quotes. Supporting details may include evidence, findings, data, sentences of analysis or discussion, and memorable wording or definitions. And you may also want to include a comment section for your own thoughts and questions. I would recommend further differentiating the types of notes with a key that identifies different fonts used. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner the key here. For example, you can use italics to identify paraphrases, quotation marks, of course, to identify direct quotes, and bold for your own comments. Or you could try using different colored fonts for this purpose. This comparison template, adapted from Heart, is designed for multiple sources at once, which is particularly useful for literature reviews and in-depth research papers. It allows you to group sources by topic and explore their similarities and differences. This in turn gives you a way to structure your paper or review by subtopic or theme. So choose a subtopic or theme and place it in the key concept row. Each column will be used for a different article, identified by the author and date listed in the top row. You can change the category names in the first column as suits your own research. This is again just to give you a starting place. And then fill out each column for the source listed at the top. This way you can understand how different sources compare in their findings on this subtopic or theme. And also just to remind you that all of those templates will be on the handout. So to keep your notes organized and effective, it's important to know when to quote versus when to paraphrase. Your writing that you're preparing for should be made up of mostly paraphrases because it's your writing. It should be mostly your words. But there are certain times when quoting, which is using someone else's exact words, can be useful in a research paper. So use quotes where wording is very memorable or important. The author's words should be unique and unusual and get their point across concisely. Quoting may be useful when defining a term as well, because the wording can't easily be changed without altering the meaning. It's also pertinent to quote when you want to respond to or critique someone else's exact words, though this is common when doing a close reading of literature or engaging in a critical debate in your field. So there is a place for quotes, but overall try to minimize the use of quotes in a research paper. And when you do quote, choose the part of the quote that's most relevant. It could even be just a word or two, perhaps a short phrase. A short phrase can be embedded within a sentence in which you do most of the work yourself, paraphrasing the rest of the idea or analyzing the short phrase. So like we saw in the second template used for gathering evidence, be sure to summarize the main idea and main supporting points, paraphrase specific statements or passages, and then optionally pair the notes with a short quote that captures its essence. And when you do quote, ensure that you record the page number as well, and always put your quotes in double quotation marks to signal that they're the exact words of the source's author. Note that a quote or any piece of evidence never speaks for itself. It's up to you to explain the quote in the context of your own paper. Therefore, find a way on your notes template to include an area for your own thoughts or analysis. As a writer, you've chosen the quote for a reason. You may want to record that reason, why it's important to your paper, so that you remember how you wanted to use the quote. It's also important to take the time to paraphrase and summarize effectively when taking notes. This will help to capture a clear and complete understanding so that you remember when you return to your notes later. The main difference between a paraphrase and summary is that a paraphrase is of a specific wording or passage, maybe a sentence or two, up to a short paragraph, while a summary is to identify and record the main idea or thesis, or the main points that support the thesis of a source. When you paraphrase, you might use a signal phrase referring to a specific statement, like Baldwin states. When you summarize, you may use a more general signal phrase that captures the main idea, like Baldwin argues. Like quoting, you'll actually only paraphrase when you want to record the meaning of a specific portion or passage of the source, a specific statement with a signal phrase like Baldwin states. When you're working with several sources, much of the work you do to collect your notes will be summarizing. It's essential to record the main idea or argument of each source you read so that you document the context of your other notes. Main points, which are pieces of support for the argument, are also important to allow you to follow the logic of the author's argument or findings later. You can also summarize specific passages by stating the idea of the passage in fewer words. When paraphrases come in, it's with specific details, like pieces of evidence, findings, data, and the author's analysis or discussion. Always record the page number of a paraphrase so that you can find it later. The same can be said for summary if you're summarizing a particular portion of the text. Paraphrasing and summarizing vastly improve the flow of your writing when you begin to piece your evidence together into paragraphs. It can be very awkward to just put quote after quote with very few of your own words. Paraphrasing and summarizing allow you to transition smoothly without the choppiness of overquoting. My most crucial suggestion for paraphrasing and summarizing effectively is to do so without looking at the original source. This will help you avoid using the exact wording of the original author. So after actively reading, you should synthesize the idea or passage in your own mind before you record it. Think about it. Be sure you understand it. Once you've done that, put the original away and write a draft of your paraphrase in your own words according to your own understanding. Then you can check your paraphrase against the original source to ensure that it's sufficiently different from the original. Ensure that the wording and the sentence structure are both different. And if you've used a lot of the same wording, revise those areas to complete your own wording. Remember that the most effective way to gather evidence will summarize the main ideas and main points, and pair these with paraphrases of the most important details, perhaps with a few memorable quotes sprinkled in. So to review, here are some true and false questions. You can put T or F or true or false into the chat. So would you say engaging physically with a source is an example of active reading is true or false? Got some T's coming in, yes. So hopefully that's a good reminder for you. Engaging physically with the source in some way will help you to actively read it. What about note-taking templates can help you record key details and compare sources? That be true or false? T or F? Okay, getting some more T's. Exactly, yeah. So remember to check out the note-taking templates that we'll link to on the handout. You might choose to quote if the wording is unique and concise. So would that be true or false? But when you would quote. Okay, true, right. And then remember the opposite of that you don't want to quote if it's a rambling, wordy, long paragraph. You want to just hone in on the very best phrase that will describe that paragraph. And finally, would this be true or false? You should draft your paraphrase with the original source in front of you. Okay, I've got a few F's coming in, so that's good. Maybe a T or two. Yeah, so remember to actually put the original source away. Do not have it in front of you when you draft your paraphrase. It's too easy to pull the exact wording by accident if you have it right in front of you when you're drafting your paraphrase. So resist the temptation and put it away. Minimize the document. Okay, thanks for participating, everyone. Now I'll turn it back over to Joanna.
All right, thank you. I'm just taking control of the slides. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So now we're going to go on to talk about the research plan. So to formulate a research plan, the first thing you'll want to do is to pose your topic as a question. As you read, think about your stance on your topic or the angle at which you would like to examine it. You will, of course, need to narrow these ideas down to a focused thesis topic as you continue to gather evidence from your research. As you proceed to develop a thesis, think about the resources you need: books, journal articles, theses and dissertations, newspaper articles perhaps, and where you will find these resources. Then plan out a research journal. Doing some pre-reading before you start digging into in-depth research can really help you get a handle on what you'll be looking for. As you do your pre-reading, it can help to create a mind map of your ideas. So for an example, I have a lot of students come to me with really broad topics, like they're doing a paper on women in the ancient world. And I have to try to parse out what direction they'd like to go with their research, because that's maybe a bit too broad for one paper. They may decide to focus on feminism or work or day-to-day life, motherhood, relationship, religion, and probably a particular geographic area as well. So here's an example of a mind map. So we'll start with the main idea, the circle in the center, and brainstorm related ideas. Then you refine your mind map to the areas that you really want to focus on in your search. So we went from all of these different ideas down to just 3 main topics with some subtopics. So here's an example. The central idea of a research topic could be, what impact does screen time have on cognitive function? With each branch of the mind map representing a specific aspect of this idea. This is the brainstorming part. So for instance, topics could include younger people, older people, cognitive processes, screen time, and then various subtopics within all of those. From this brainstorming, you can then decide how you want to focus. In this case, I decided to focus on how video games affect the memory and reading comprehension of school children. I've used the tool found on Mindomo to create this map, but there's lots of free different online mind mapping. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can keep organized and focused as you search. So we're actually just wrapping up now, so feel free to start putting questions in the chat box and we'll just do our concluding remarks. So first of all, we wanted to hear what you'll take away from this session, what you're going to try. Since we started out with our first activity on what you already do for organizing your research, what you're going to try next, I added the link in the chat box there, so if you want to use that, that would be great. And we'll just wrap up. So remember that organizational styles are personal. Choose your approach and be consistent, write throughout, and back everything up. And now we'll give you a little bit more information on where you can go for help during the research process. AU Library offers webinars and tutorials, assistance with your search strategies, access to materials, and help with your technical difficulties. And Robin's going to tell us about research data management support.
Thanks, Joanna. If you're working on a project that requires you to collect data, for example, if you're interviewing participants, working with archival materials, designing an experiment, sourcing statistics or data sets from other researchers or Statistics Canada, or if you have data you want to share with others, the library offers support and resources for managing and sharing that data as well. You can book individual appointments for assistance or review the resources we have put together and linked into your handout. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions you might have.
Okay, thanks, Joanna and Robin. I'll let you know a little bit about the Write site now. The Write site offers writing support in many ways. You can get one-on-one support through the writing Dropbox by uploading your assignment and getting written feedback. Or you can also book a real-time appointment and have a video chat appointment with a writing coach to ask all your questions. Just email us if you need support booking. We also have community spaces like the Writing Forum, which takes place every Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. Mountain. It's an informal gathering of students and writing coaches, so it gives you a place to ask questions about writing or share your experiences. It's quite fun and relaxed, and you can learn a lot even just by listening. So I definitely encourage you to come out. And finally, when you visit our website, you'll also find many other resources to help you with your writing. We have an English grammar handbook and resources all about the writing process and all those steps that I mentioned in the time management section. So we hope to see you there soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah Jean. So we also have a handout that I know that Crystal has already sent out to everyone. I think this Google Doc link is old, so that probably won't work anymore, but we've moved it onto Microsoft. So you'll have the handout, and we have a question coming up on, I don't know, Robin or Sarah Jean, if you can answer this, on OneNote as a tool. I personally haven't used OneNote very much, so I'm not sure if anyone else has stronger opinions about OneNote.
I haven't used it as much as I've used Evernote because that was what I had access to at the time when I was organizing assignments. But tools like that can be useful if you wanted to set up your note-taking template within the tool and have all of your notes there together. So I used to use that with Evernote, and then I had tags I could add on to my notes within the notebook tool. So I knew that I had all of my notes, say, for preparing for a comprehensive or candidacy exam in one place. So OneNote could be a useful tool for things like that if you want to keep all of your notes together rather than saving them as separate files on your computer. An additional piece to be aware of if you're using any of those other tools is that some of those file formats are proprietary. So if you no longer have access to the software, you will lose access to all of your notes. So be aware of ways that you can potentially export things out. A nice thing about OneNote is it's fairly interoperable with other Microsoft products. So you can potentially export to Word documents or PDFs and back and forth. It's something to be aware of with different annotation tools as well. So if you're using PDF readers or applications that are advertised kind of like PDF Readers Plus, be aware of what file format it saves to, because if it's a proprietary one, you may also want to export just as a plain PDF so that you keep access to your notes. I hope that's helpful there. I think OneNote would be a great tool for keeping track of your notes. It can be quite useful in that respect.
Does anyone else have questions? We can also take you onto camera if you put your hands up.
Looks like Favor asked, are there inherent conflicts between mind mapping and doing a lit review? It feels like I'm doing a mind map. I'm not following the literature or like trying to systematically find the gap.
I can jump in there a little bit, and then you guys can take over. Am I sounding all right with the camera on, or should I keep it off? Okay. So my thinking for that is like you still need to focus your research. So that's kind of what I was talking about with using the mind map, was deciding on an area that you're going to do a literature review on. Because as I use this, the example, like doing a literature review, if you do want to do a literature review on like everything that's ever been written on women in the ancient world, that's going to be a really, really huge amount of research to go through. So usually, depending how broad you want, but usually having some kind of focus is useful. But I think you two might be able to jump in with some more ideas there as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't think that they fully conflict because, yes, during the planning stages, you need to brainstorm your topic. However, sometimes doing the literature review can be the process that helps you to refine your topic for a larger project like your dissertation. Because you're going through all of the literature and you're learning all the findings on a topic. So it might help you to narrow your topic when you find like a theme or a subtopic that you want to focus in on more. So I guess in that sense, brainstorming, mind mapping might come in handy even during the process to help you determine what those subtopics and themes are, help you determine those connections between the different articles. So I don't think they're at odds, but I mean, you are right that you don't want to kind of make up an idea and then just go and find the literature that maybe kind of fits. But I think they can go hand in hand in some cases.
And just to build on what Sarah Jean said there too, I've used it after I've done a bunch of reading in my topic areas to try and group things into how I'm going to write it linearly, because sometimes you have a paper that addresses more than one topic that you need to cite in more than one place. So I've created some mind maps that weren't as pretty as Joanna's, where it's like a list of the papers that talk about each topic, so that I can get a sense of how I may need to keep rearranging them in order to make the flow work. So it can be a very useful tool both for thinking about your ideas and then for how to perhaps adjust them if you read the literature and realize, oh, wait, I need to cover this section, or I hadn't realized there was a gap here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Rebecca said, a random comment, is it just me or does it feel like you need a degree in organization just to keep info together for multiple classes? So yeah, like Joanna was showing you, you can definitely put some of these organization strategies into play with your courses, like the folder naming, and hopefully that will make it a bit easier. Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for all your nice comments in the chat.
Okay, well, I guess yes, I've already sent out the slides, the slide deck and the handout to everybody. So check your email for that. And as Joanna had mentioned, she's going to be working on getting this presentation put up on the YouTube channel. So, and the link to that is above to the YouTube channel, so you can check back there. And Joanna, I think all sessions are going to be put up there, like 1, 2, and 3.
As long as the recordings work, as I said, yeah. Session 1 didn't record properly, right. So I have to do some troubleshooting and see if I can access it. It's never happened to me before, but...
Yeah, and this does happen from time to time, but we can provide the handout and the slides for a recap for everyone from that session as well. So yes, the handouts were just emailed maybe 15 minutes ago, so you will receive those. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. Thank you library folks for doing this for us today. And I have also in the slides included the link to register for sessions 4 and 5 coming up. So please do that so you get the most out of this series. Great, so thanks everyone and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Crystal. Thanks, everybody.